Good morning, evening, afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark.
And I'm Zoe.
And we are the Board Adventurers. We're here with you today. We're going to start a new series. It's going to be called Fresh Off the Shelf. We're going to review a game that has come out roughly within the last calendar year. So we're trying to divide up the ones that we've had already, like our late to the games from anything that's recent. And we'll get into our rating at the end of the video. Today, we're going to talk to you about a game called Earth. This game is designed by Maxime Tardif and published by Inside Up Games. Now, Earth is a 1 to 5 player engine building, ecosystem, tableau building type of game, where you start off with 3 cards. So you're going to start off with a climate card, you're going to start off with a weather card, and you're going to start with an ecosystem card. And they're specified by these 3 colors here. So you'll have a blue for your weather, blue for your island, sorry. You have an orange for a weather card, and you'll have a green, which is an ecosystem. Now, this will give you almost like an asymmetrical kind of start, with an ecosystem being your scoring at the end of the game. All the players will have their own, and they'll also have 2 ecosystem cards to score at the end of the game as well. Along with that, you're going to have fauna cards, which are almost like milestone type of cards. So if you're the first player to get it, you're going to get points based on a scale, a decreasing scale. And the idea of Earth is that you're going to have 4 different actions that you can take, and they'll range from planting a card to composting cards, to playing sprouts, and then playing stumps to build your trees up. And there's 3 different kinds of cards. So there's going to be a green card, which is your plant card, and they'll give you things like places to put your stumps, places to put your sprouts, and they'll give you effects at the bottom. Then you have terrain cards, which will give you points based on a certain criteria at the end of the game, based on how you create your tableau, or some sort of adjacency. And then finally, that was an event card. They have the little lightning bolt. It's a one-time effect, and they'll give you the effect at the bottom. These are the terrain cards. They'll give you some sort of end game condition based on how your tableau is set up. Once a person builds 16 cards in their tableau, it's a 4x4. They'll trigger the end of the game, and they'll finish out the round. So each player will get to be the starting player once, and after that, whoever has the most victory points at the end of the game is the winner. Now, this is like a very base thing. We're going to probably go into the actual gameplay and arc as we discuss this video. So, what do you think about Earth?
Earth is a surprisingly really good game. I just kind of like the way the game kind of scales, like the arc of the game, building the tableau and your tableau and using it as an engine building mechanic.
Right.
It really works for this game. There's a lot of scoring mechanics in this game. It's like everything you do, you can score, which is always a good feeling with these type of games. Like you feel like you're progressing as you go. But even with everything that you do and kind of scoring, the game always feels pretty tight still at the end. So it never feels like you're doing something wrong,
right? Or
that what someone else is doing is a way more of a scoring opportunity than what you're doing, which I do like about this game as well.
Right.
So any avenue that you can take can be the right avenue, right? Because there's so many different ways to score.
I see. What do you think about the whole follow mechanic in this game?
The follow mechanic, I do like that in these sort of games where you choose an ability and everyone can follow like the secondary action.
Right.
I do like that. Sometimes it doesn't work in games, but I think this works better because it keeps you engaged throughout the whole game.
Right, because like it feels like on every turn, you always feel like you're doing something.
Exactly. Yeah.
And even if you don't have like certain colors built into your tableau already, you still have at least one action where you can follow it just outright.
Yeah. What's interesting about that mechanic specifically is like that specific thing works well in heavy games because it's so long that you want to keep the player engaged. But this game is kind of a brisk hour.
Yeah, I think you can try to get this down in an hour if you tried.
This is like a brisk hour to an hour and a half. So having that kind of follow mechanic is interesting in this, but it kind of works. It keeps you engaged throughout that whole time, even though the actions are fairly quick.
Yeah, and a lot of times, like, you don't even have to play the plant cards action for you to be able to plant cards.
Yeah.
Like, it's only if you want to try to combine it with a second card that you want to do.
Yeah, it adds like some interesting aspects to it in terms of you want to do a specific thing, but you don't want to waste your whole turn on it, so you're waiting for someone else to do the same thing so you can do that.
Right.
But it's almost a gamble.
Yeah.
But it is, gives it some good tension in terms of the decision making that you have while it's getting to your turn.
Right.
Yeah.
And like the four base actions you have in this game are really just you get to plant a card, so you get to put it into your tableau. You have to place it either diagonally or orthogonally from an already placed card. Then the second action is you get money, in a sense, like soil is money in this game.
Yeah.
But along with that, you also get to compost. So compost lets you take cards either from your hand if you follow, or from the top of the deck, depending on like what action you're taking. But the red action lets you take it from the top of the deck, and those are victory points at the end of the game too.
The compost action is actually one of the most interesting parts of the game for me, and I know it's a very minor mechanic, but it's so unique for this type of game. Usually, discarding cards from your hand isn't a benefit, but for this game, just each discarded card is a victory point. So you want to like cull through your deck, and I find that interesting as a mechanic in this game.
And I think like along with that is that sometimes you need to have some compost because you needed to pay to do other actions.
Exactly, yeah.
Like sometimes you might need to put in a stump or something, or put in one of those little sprouts.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you have to get rid of maybe 1 to 3 of your own compost.
Yeah, and based off the compost thing, because compost is such a big action in this game, the decks are huge. The decks have a lot of cards.
Possibly like 200 cards, possibly?
Yeah.
But it's like a pretty decent stack.
Yeah, but what's impressive about that is that all the cards feel fairly unique. So choosing what to compost is very, important because there's certain cards that you're going to want because you're probably not going to see that card again. But not only that, it's just impressive that each game is going to feel very different. Because each card in the 200 card deck is pretty unique based off of the strategy that you took based off the cards that starts off in the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
So it does a good job of making itself feel like a different game every game that you play.
Right, because like along with just your tableau, so you can activate your tableau, but you have to activate it from the top left going row by row down, right?
Yeah.
So each game, you're going to be building your tableau differently based on what you want to kind of like proctor prior to it.
Yeah.
Along with that, you're going to also want placement, right? So like a lot of these cards have different symbols on them.
Yeah.
And a lot of your victory conditions at the end come down to maybe like what kind of symbols you have in your tableau, like what kind of, placement do you have adjacent to it, right? Because like I think there's like at least like 4 different weathers that are on each of these cards.
Yeah.
And they're at like the top of the green card or like the terrain card. And then you also have like types. So you're going to have like bushes and you have mushrooms, trees.
Yeah.
And then those have their own victory scoring conditions based on, either your ecosystem or like some sort of terrain that you place out on the field. And then terrains are kind of crazy too. Like when I first played this game, there was a terrain card that gave me 1 for every card in my compost to like a max of 30. But to me, I thought that was kind of insane. Like it was like 30 points off of 1 card.
Yeah.
Like this is great.
It's a great efficiency engine. Like if you like the games that you play where you try to become more efficient with each game, this is pretty much the perfect game for that. Especially with the fact that the cards that Mark explained at the beginning in terms of determines the type of scoring that you do each game are so different that what makes you efficient is different from each game to game.
Yeah, and sometimes in some games they only give you 1 victory condition to choose from. In this game, they give you 2 shared with everybody.
Yeah.
So you want to like kind of benefit off of that, and then you pick one personal for you.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's our previous videos we reviewed Welcome to Your New Perfect Home, and we've reviewed Nidavellir, and one of the complaints with those 2 games specifically is that you kind of realize there are specific actions that you should focus on.
Yeah.
Because that's the best way to win, and it kind of defeats the purpose of other actions in the game, which kind of makes the game less interesting as it goes. Earth kind of bypasses that while having the victory conditions change each game. So there's no doing this, you have to do this every game to win. It changes. Right. One game utilizing, the greenery can be very important, and the next game you play, they're not as important.
Yeah, like there might be some cards that be like, if you have at least, like different numbers of sprouts in a row, or different numbers of sprouts in a column.
Yeah.
And then maybe another game, it's like if you have, like different, if you have capped your trees, the different heights of your trees.
Yeah.
And or sometimes it'll be like if you have, certain, like if you have all lines of bushes in your, like it's just, it creates such a variety that's just kind of beautiful to see.
Yeah, the replayability is really high without sacrificing the enjoyment of the game. Because there's some games that try to increase its replayability, but then the other modes or the way it does it is not as interesting as the base one.
Yeah.
Earth kind of like the replayability is high, but it's still the same fun each time.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like whenever you draw cards too, it's like, oh, I saw this last game, it's not good.
Yeah.
In another game, it could be like, this is amazing in this game.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I have 2 cons for this game. The first one is the theme. At this point, these nature-themed games are just not as interesting to me. There are a dime a dozen. There's so many of them that come out that at this point it almost feels themeless.
Okay, I can understand that. Yeah.
And the second one, that's a very minor con. That doesn't really affect whether or not I enjoy the game. It's, mechanics first, but I just want to point out that the theme is kind of like over nature type games. But the second thing, and I think it's more important, is the iconography in the game. It's not very intuitive.
Yeah, like I think when we first played this, there was a little bit of a confusion for the composting, right? Like we weren't sure what the cards, like there was the symbol that you had to take 2 cards from the top of the deck and compost them.
Yeah.
And like it was a first time play, so it's like we are used to it now. But it kind of, to me, I could interpret it as like you have to take them 2 from your hand.
Yeah.
And shuffle them in.
Like my thing with iconography in game, if you're gonna have because this game has a ton of iconography because there's a ton of different actions and a ton of different things that can be done. If you're gonna use iconography like this, they have to be very distinct from each other. There can't be any confusion like, oh, is this a compost or is this a draw? Can't be any confusion with that. And they have to be very obviously what it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think it's hard because like say that compost symbol, right? When you put cards into your compost, you're covering up the symbol on the board.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna understand like, oh, like where's that symbol now? And like, oh, I have to move my cards off.
Like the sprout, I mean, like it's a stump symbol.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like kind of, to me, it looks more like a fingerprint.
It looks like a fingerprint.
Yeah.
It could have been, I don't know. Maybe people would disagree with me.
Maybe put it like in an elevation view.
Elevation or a tree.
I understand that. Like like an actual looking like standing trunk.
It doesn't look like I'm growing a stump.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by if you're going to use iconography, to have to be very distinctly what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I think though, like once we got the iconography down, like playing it maybe the 3rd, 4th time, it was just easy to pick up though. So these are just very minor.
Yeah, these are very minor cons. I'm just trying to I always want to bring cons to anything.
That's fair.
Review.
Yeah,
those are my cons for it. I don't think it greatly impacts my review scale, like my score for this game.
Yeah.
But I do think it is important to bring up because iconography for the first playthroughs is a hindrance to the enjoyment of the game.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think for me, like if I were to have a con, I would say it's possibly a little too short for my taste.
Really?
Like I play a lot slower, so I like to be able to kind of like know which cards I want to build out. And a lot of the times, I'm never that person to finish the 16, and I'm usually 3 or 4 cards behind. I'd like to maybe if I could extend that one more round as opposed to just finish that one round. But that's like again a very minor thing. I still really greatly enjoy this game.
That's it. Yeah, it's funny because I kind of disagree with you a little bit on the. I like games that are between 1 and 1.5 hour long. So I think this kind of hits my sweet spot.
Yeah,
but I totally get it. It is one of those games. It's like at the end of it, you're kind of like, damn, there's so much I wish I could have done, but I didn't.
Yeah, I think because like we usually play with larger groups, so we played this 4 and 5, and it feels like I usually take my action, like I'll be the lead action maybe 10 to 15 times a game. I'd like to like maybe play it at lower player counts to kind of see like how tight that is, how many actions you really get. But I like to be able to make a decision kind of like on my own and then not have to worry about other people kind of pushing that decision in there.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I guess now we can get into what our review scale for fresh off the shelf reviews are going to be. If you want to.
Oh, yeah. So we talked this over, and I think we're going to be going with a 5 scale. So it's going to be out of 5. And we're going to kind of like, we're going to tinker with it a little bit, but for now we're going to try to see, so like from 0 to 1, it's basically an unplayable game, which is going to be like pretty rare. When you get to like 1 to 2, it's a game that's okay, but we wouldn't play it again. A 2 to 3 will be a game where it's okay if people want to play it. We'll bring it out and we'll play through it. 3 to 4 is a game that we would recommend to some people, and I think it would be like we would bring it out on certain occasions. And then a 4 to 5 is we want to try to get this in as many people's hands as possible. Like just get them to play the game, kind of sit them through it, try to get them to see like the beauty of what that game is. And then, so that would be what we're looking to do in terms of these, like, fresh off the shelf kind of games.
Yeah. So in terms of, like, a review score for Earth, what would you give this game?
So, I guess what I failed to mention is that we're trying to do this at, like, a half scale, too. Oh, so we're trying to hit them at the half points. But this game is great. I really enjoyed every single time I played Earth. This would come out around a 4.5 for me. This is a great game. I love the decisions you have. Every single time you get your hand, it's always, I want to build this card, but I need money. I'm gonna have to follow somebody when they get the compost, the compost action. But now I have enough money, but I could play 2 cards instead. So maybe I want to divide this out. Well, then I want to play this terrain that benefits because these 2 are bushes. I want to score off of these bushes. There's just so many different decisions, and as you're like drawing cards throughout the game, you feel like you're trying to make decisions that'll help you, like optimize everything, and that's great. I really like this game.
Yeah.
What about you?
This is a hard game for me to review because I'm similar to you, which I'm going to give this a 4.5, but I've been teetering on a 4 for a while. But I think I'm going to settle on a 4.5. I think the game, like, I do have complaints about the iconography and just kind of the theme just in general. But I think everything this game does well, it does really, really well, better than most games that are trying to do the same things it is.
Right.
So that's why I come at a 4.5 as well, because I just do think it's top echelon of the type of game that it's trying to be.
Right.
And if you kind of like all the mechanics that we discussed in this game, in terms of like engine building, efficiency type games, tableau building, that determines kind of like your action selection, this is kind of like the top echelon of all of those games.
Definitely. Yeah, like when we pulled this out, it was like, when we played the first time, I was like, this is pretty good.
Yeah, my first playthrough was pretty rough because I had a hard time with the rules a little bit. But the subsequent playthroughs, it really clicked for me.
Yeah.
So I say even if you do get it and the first playthrough was rough, give it some time.
Yeah.
Until you it clicks for you, and it's really, really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, 4.5 for me.
All right. With that being said, we'll see if we can do more of these fresh off the shelf games. But otherwise, we're the Board Adventurers. I'm Mark.
I'm Zoe.
We'll see you on the next adventure.